Good morning. Today we're going to talk about senses, or our ability to detect things in our environment. We can do so because we have structures called receptors, which are able to detect different stimuli. So we're going to discuss first types of receptors that we have in our bodies. Okay, so receptor types. Types of receptors. And we can first discuss them in terms of what type of stimuli they respond to. So we have your chemoreceptors. They detect chemicals in our environment. So things like pH, for example, or your level of carbon dioxide in the blood, PCO2. We also have thermoreceptors. Thermoreceptors detect temperature, the temperature of your skin, the temperature of the blood. Then we have your mechanoreceptors. These receptors detect change in shape. For example, a touch on your skin would change the shape of your skin, and that would activate these receptors. And then we have your proprioceptors. Proprioceptors, these are usually in our joints. Their job is to detect where our limbs are by measuring the stretching of our muscle tendons. Kind of gives us a sense of our body location in space, even with our eyes closed. We call these your proprioceptors. Okay, so those are the four types of receptors we have mostly, and it's based on the type of stimulus that they respond to. We may also classify receptors depending on where the stimulus is, so the stimulus location. So we have your interoceptors. They detect things on the inside of the body. So these are the ones that would detect your pH, your blood pressure. All right. Then we have your exteroceptors. These detect things outside the body, like temperature in the room, for example, or, touch coming through the skin. Those are your exteroceptors. All right. Next, we will look at some features of receptors. Hold on, left my eraser somewhere. So, back on screen. So the receptors can adapt to the stimulus. Meaning, if you kept the stimulus on long term, some receptors will fire and some will shut off. So we have what's called phasic receptors versus tonic receptors. So in phasic receptors, these receptors will say fire. So if the stimulus turns on now, on stimulus, and if it's off at this point, off stimulus, it will fire, and then slow down. Maybe fire like that, and then at the very end it fires again. So these receptors will change their firing rate as the stimulus stays intact. So this one's phasic. It's on and then off at some point. On at maybe at the beginning of the stimulus, and then goes off and then comes back on when it's removed. This is typical of things like touch. You can sense your clothing on your body initially, but after a while it goes away, even though it's still there, because receptors for touch will shut off after a while. So they behave phasically. Then others will, if it's on at this point, off at this point, they'll fire the entire time without stopping. Okay, we call these your tonic receptors, meaning they do not change their firing rate until it's gone. And this is probably what we will find, especially in pain pathways. You always feel pain no matter what until you address the issue for what's causing the pain. Okay. And then another thing that we want to discuss in general terms about receptors is also the pathways of sensation. Once receptors are activated, they will relay the signal up to your cortex. So in order to do that, there has to be a pathway for it. So typically, if here is your stimulus, That stimulus has to be relayed into the CNS, usually spinal cord or brainstem. Then from there, a second neuron will cross over and carry it up further, usually up to your thalamus, where it's sorted out. And then from there, a third neuron will relay the message up to your cerebral cortex. So it's a typical 3-neuron pathway. We call the first one is called the first order neuron or the primary neuron. The second one is called the second order neuron. This means second order 2 with an upper 0. And the third neuron is the tertiary neuron. So it's a 3-neuron pathway. So I want you guys to know where the first one begins and ends, where the second one begins and ends, and where the third one begins and ends. And also note that the secondary neuron usually decussate. It crosses over from left to right. Okay, we'll pause here.